It was an ordinary evening at one of the most popular restaurants in the city, a place known for its elegant atmosphere, fine cuisine, and celebrity clientele. The staff was busy, the tables were full, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. But none of the waiters knew that tonight, something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would later become a story everyone in town would be talking about. The night a waiter insulted a man who secretly owned the very restaurant he worked in. Big Shaq, known to millions not just for his towering height but for his larger-than-life personality, walked in quietly through the side entrance. Dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, he didn't draw attention at first. He wasn't here to make an appearance or be recognized. He simply wanted to enjoy a peaceful dinner, to observe how his staff was performing without revealing who he truly was. For Shaq, it was a test, a secret inspection of sorts. As he took a seat near the corner, the waiter assigned to his table, a young man named Eric, approached with a forced smile. Eric had just started working there a few months ago, and though he had potential, his attitude had started to change. He'd grown arrogant, impatient, and dismissive toward customers who didn't seem wealthy or important. To him, Shaq looked like just another regular guy, maybe even someone who couldn't afford the restaurant's prices. "Can I help you?" Eric asked in a tone that sounded more like a challenge than a greeting. Shaq looked up, smiled warmly, and nodded. "Yeah, I'll just have a menu, please." But instead of a polite response, Eric rolled his eyes slightly and muttered something under his breath. He dropped the menu onto the table with a thud and walked away. Shaq watched him go, his smile fading but his patience intact. He'd dealt with worse. Minutes later, Shaq ordered a simple meal, nothing extravagant, just a steak and a glass of water. But the attitude from the waiter continued. Eric sighed as he took the order, grumbling about people coming to fancy places without knowing how much things cost. A few nearby diners noticed his tone, glancing at each other awkwardly. Shaq, ever calm, stayed quiet, even though inside, he was disappointed. This was his restaurant, his team, and this young man was failing the very principle he built the place upon: respect. As Shaq waited for his meal, he watched the staff carefully. Most of them were doing their jobs well, greeting customers with genuine warmth. The chef in the open kitchen was moving with rhythm and precision. The hostess was managing the flow of guests gracefully. But Eric stood out, for all the wrong reasons. He moved from table to table with irritation, snapping at coworkers, pretending he was above them all. Shaq took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do, but he wanted to wait. When the meal arrived, Eric placed the plate down without a word. Shaq thanked him kindly, but the waiter ignored it and walked away. A couple at a nearby table shook their heads at the rudeness. "You'd think people working in a place like this would have better manners," one whispered. Shaq smiled slightly. They were right. He decided he would let this play out naturally. Halfway through his meal, another waiter, a woman named Sarah, noticed what was going on. She came over, refilled Shaq's water, and apologized quietly for her coworker's behavior. "I'm so sorry, sir. That's not how we treat guests here," she said with sincerity. Shaq appreciated her kindness. "It's all good," he replied. "You're doing great. Keep that attitude." When Shaq finished eating, he asked for the bill. Eric came back, dropped it on the table, and said, "You know, people like you usually don't come to places like this. Hope it wasn't too expensive for you." The insult was open, sharp, and cruel. Several nearby customers heard it and gasped softly. Shaq looked up, calm but serious. "Excuse me?" he asked softly. Eric shrugged, smirking. "Just saying, this place is kind of high-end." Shaq nodded slowly. "You're right, it is high-end," he said. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a quick call. Within seconds, the restaurant manager came rushing out from the back. "Mr. O'Neill, you're here tonight," the manager said, his face pale with surprise. Eric froze where he stood. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward the massive figure sitting calmly at the corner table. Shaq leaned back in his chair, his deep voice echoing across the room. "So, this young man here, does he always treat customers like this?" The manager stuttered, shaking his head. "And no, sir. I'll handle it immediately." Eric's jaw dropped. "Wait, Mr. O'Neill, as in, the owner," he stammered. Shaq looked directly at him, his expression serious but not angry. "That's right. I own this restaurant." The color drained from Eric's face. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by fear and embarrassment. "Sir, I didn't know. I thought," he began, but Shaq held up a hand to stop him. "That's the point. You didn't know. And that's why you should treat everyone with respect. You never know who's sitting at your table." The restaurant was silent except for the quiet clinking of glasses. The manager quickly pulled Eric aside, whispering urgently. But Shaq raised his voice again, addressing the entire dining area. "You see, folks," he said, "this place was built on one rule: treat people with kindness. Doesn't matter if they're rich or broke, famous or unknown. If you work here, you treat them like family." A ripple of applause began at one table, then another, until the whole restaurant joined in. Shaq smiled again, nodding humbly. He wasn't one to humiliate anyone, but lessons like this needed to be taught. After a few moments, he turned to Eric, who was now on the verge of tears. "I'm not going to fire you," Shaq said softly. "But you're going to start from the bottom again. Wash dishes for a while. Learn what respect really means." Eric nodded silently, ashamed but grateful. "Yes, sir," he said, voice trembling. Shaq stood up, towering over everyone, and extended his hand. "Make it right, kid. Everyone deserves a second chance. But you have to earn it." The waiter shook his hand, eyes watery, as the whole room watched the moment unfold. Later that night, as Shaq left the restaurant, several customers approached him to thank him. "That was incredible," one woman said. "Most people would have fired him on the spot." Shaq smiled gently. "I've been that kid before," he replied. "Everyone makes mistakes. The real test is how we fix them." When Eric came in the next morning, he was a changed man. He put on his apron and joined the dishwashing crew without complaint. For weeks, he worked hard, learned humility, and slowly earned back the respect of his colleagues. The staff noticed the transformation. He greeted guests with genuine warmth, helped others, and never again judged someone by their appearance. One afternoon, Shaq returned unannounced. He found Eric clearing tables, smiling as he served a family with small children. "You doing all right, man?" Shaq asked as he passed by. Eric turned, eyes lighting up. "Yes, sir. Thank you for giving me another chance." Shaq nodded. "That's what it's about, son. Growth." Over time, Eric became one of the restaurant's best employees. Customers praised his attitude, and other staff began to look up to him. Eventually, Shaq promoted him to floor manager, recognizing his improvement and commitment. "You earned this," Shaq told him, "not because of where you started, but because of how you changed." The story spread across social media like wildfire. People were moved by the humility of a billionaire owner who chose to teach rather than punish, and by a young man who learned to turn his mistake into motivation. News outlets picked it up, headlines reading, "Waiter insults Big Shaq, learns a life-changing lesson." Weeks later, during an interview, Shaq was asked about the incident. "I believe in giving people a chance to grow," he said. "You never know what someone's going through. Sometimes, all they need is a wake-up call, not a punishment." His words resonated deeply, becoming a viral quote across the internet. At the restaurant, a small plaque was later hung near the entrance, engraved with Shaq's message, "Respect everyone. You never know who's watching, or who owns the place." It became a quiet reminder to every employee and customer who walked through the doors. And as for Eric, he carried that lesson with him forever. He often told new hires about that night, not to boast, but to warn. I once disrespected a man who turned out to be the owner, he'd say. But instead of ruining my life, he helped me rebuild it. That's the kind of person I want to be. The restaurant continued to thrive, not just because of its food or design, but because of its heart. Every person there understood the importance of humility, kindness, and second chances. And Big Shaq, though a global icon, remained the same, grounded, wise, and always ready to teach a lesson in the most unexpected ways. That night would never be forgotten. It wasn't just a story about a rude waiter or a secret owner. It was about humanity, about remembering that titles, fame, and money mean nothing if we lose the ability to treat others with dignity. And that, more than anything, was the true flavor of success.